Welcome to Spider-Man Noir, right here at the Comicstorian channel. This is where we take your favorite comic books, we break them down into digestible bites, and I read them dramatically back to you, sometimes with a bit of flair or a bizarre accent, like today. Spider-Man Noir is a superhero in an alternate universe. The 1940s, 50s, 60s is kind of like a melded up time frame. But he's basically a detective in the past. You've seen him in your favorite movie, Into the Spider-Verse, and if it's not your favorite movie, well, you're wrong, it's my favorite movie. But anyway, Spider-Man Noir does have his own adventures, and today we're going to be going on one of his investigations. I hope you guys enjoy this particular storyline. I'll link the previous ones down below. He just gets miniseries, and they're fun. Here we go. It was lunchtime in Midtown Manhattan as Private Eye Peter Parker finally takes a break to listen to the radio. It's 1939, and the world is on the edge as the shadow of war begins to loom over America. But that ain't stopping the crime family, the card sharks, gangsters, and goodfellas from all trying to get a piece of the pie before then. But just before Peter could enjoy his hard-boiled egg, he hears the sound of gunfire from outside, and he grabs his trusty Colt 45 springing into action. He jumps down onto the hood of a speeding car and lights up the windshield with his own bullets, disarming the mooks with his webs. Just as the car spins out of control, Peter shoots out one of the tires to spin that car around, sending it straight into the street post and launching the would-be robbers out. Peter waits for the brass to show up, but while he does, if it ain't the funny paper's very own James Jonah Jameson hitting the street with a new scoop. The Black Cat got scratched last night. Things ain't looking too good. Because of Jameson's generous donation to the precinct, the coppers let the pair into the bar to have a quick peek before things cleared out. Among the bodies scattered about, Peter notices a particular Holly Babson, a waitress with a nose for trouble that moonlit as a police informant. She didn't deserve to get the bumps, but it's what's in her hand that catches Peter's eye. A brooch unlike any other in a shape of what looks like a beetle. Peter heads out with his own meager clue and tries to put it all together. You see, last month he had to take out a blimp full of Nazis over the Hudson, and now Felicia's place gets the beat down and Holly gets iced. Things are getting dark, and he can feel it in his bones. The shadow, the chaos of war. It's crossed the pond. Twilight all the time now, and he can't do anything to stop it. A short while later, Peter heads to the library to try and find some information on the brooch when suddenly the power goes out. Before Peter can even realize it, two bookshelves come barreling down on him, and he only has seconds to escape. After webbing up, the lights come back on, and Peter sees one of the books that he was examining now conveniently has a page missing from it. Ain't that some luck? The librarian scowled at him, stating that she expected better from a Byzantinist, defacing library property and all that. But that's when he sees it. A broad in red running out the door with the missing page. And whoever they are, they're faster than him. But as Peter gives chase, the woman disappears into the night crowd in New York. All would seem lost for our crime fighter as he's trying to solve this mystery but lost all of his clues. But an advert for the Twilight and Bablyon at the Met catches his eyes. The exhibit deals in treasures found from excavations in Europe. Maybe they might be able to point him in the right direction. After a quick stroll over to the Met, Peter finds a curator, a Byzantinist. She looks very familiar, despite having only met her once. Peter shows her the brooch, and it turns out that this time, Huma Bergman is a sister to the late Holly Babson, or better known as Helga Bergman. As the two sit down for a cup of coffee, Helga explains that the brooch is actually the Cicada Stone, and it dates back to 600 AD. The one putting on the exhibit, Dr. Hellstrom, was supposed to be with him to hand it over from Berlin. And how it ended up in Helga's hand is a mystery to her, since her and Hellstrom had no personal dealings. What's more, the good doc has gone missing, and no one has seen hide nor hair of this guy. Helga begs Peter to take on the case, but her hero tells her that he already has his hands full with the 5 boroughs. Helga says that if he decides to change his mind, she'll be leaving tomorrow morning at 7 at White Plains Airfield. Peter grabs his hat, telling her, "You better not hold your breath. Take care, Doc." He heads over to Aunt May's to try and piece his whole thing together when he runs into MJ. But there's someone else behind her, and a second later there's a blinding flash. MJ spins around pelting the photographer when out of the corner of his eye, Peter sees 2 mooks making a break for Aunt May. As blood boils, Peter fires 2 web blasts, knocking the jokers down, and then there's another flash. Everyone screams, and inside, MJ says that those guys were not taking pictures for the Bugle. Peter realizes that he's seen that photographer before. He was at the Black Cat. Figured that he was just some crime scene guy, but clearly he's being followed. Guess the only real way to get any answers is to take Huma up on that job and see where things go from there. So the next morning, Peter heads to the airfield to meet with the doc, and she gives him a dossier with all of her current findings. As the two settle in on the plane heading to London, Huma says that she wants to find out who killed her sister, and Peter tells her, "Don't worry, Peter Parker's on the case." Once the pair touches down across the pond, Huma says that she pulled every string that she could and got them a meeting with the ambassador. They're going to need his help if they plan on getting over to Berlin. Peter asks how so, and Huma goes on telling him that the ambassador has a real eye for antiques, and they've worked together before, so just follow her lead and she'll do all the talking. The two then head to where the ambassador is hosting a party, and while the pair splits up, another pair of jokers keeps a real close eye on them. While trying to collect information, Peter's spider sense goes off, directing him upstairs. Like any good detective, he follows his instincts and he overhears Huma talking to someone. With no disregard for anything, Peter bursts in asking what's going on, and Huma introduces him to the ambassador. The ambassador says that it'll be very difficult to get them into Berlin. The Third Reich has made border crossings difficult. The ambassador says what could be so important that they need to get in, and Peter pulls out the cicada stone. He goes on stating that he's got some questions for the curator of the News Museum. He was a little late for his meeting in New York. The ambassador hands Peter a pack of matches from Anna's Asylum Bar, and he says that he can get them as far as Syracuse. Make sure to tell Harry he said hello. But before they could kick things off, there's a crash from a window, and the jokers from before each catch the wall crawler off guard, and they steal the stone. Without a second delay, Peter hurries after the thieves, jumping from car to bus. And just when you think a guy is cornered, he jumps out of the bus and into a phone booth. Peter webs himself over, kicking open the door, and all he finds is nothing. With nothing else but a pack of matches, the Spider and the Dame head for Sicily, where they're supposed to meet with the person who will help get them into Berlin. Peter tells the mechanic working on the plane that they're looking for a pilot named Harry, and he asks where he could find them. And the female mechanic asks who wants to know. Peter tells her that they need to get into Berlin and that the ambassador says hello. Harry pulls himself out from under the engine, lets out a sigh, and states that is, they saw her folks, and then, well, just hand over the marker. So as the trio begins to take off, a pair of soldiers come speeding in, trying to shoot them before they can even take off. But as they get closer, Peter webs up the steering wheel and he gives a hefty jerk, causing that car to flip over, giving them the necessary time to get into the air. It doesn't take long to get into Berlin, and the three stick to the shadows while avoiding the attention of any patrolling Nazi. Eventually, they make it to Dr. Hellstrom's museum, and Peter and Huma quietly enter in through the staff entrance. But what they find is that the good old Doc, well, he's dead. Before they can even ask who did it, they get a flash of light as the skylights shatter above them. Peter covers himself in the falling shards of glass and he asks, "What the?" And that's what a voice tells him, not what. Who? You can call me Electro. The large, mustached man jumps in with his backpack, a giant shock stick, firing a bolt of electricity right at Peter's chest. The blast throws him into the next room, and as Huma runs over to check on him, the wall crawler fires a web upward and slingshots himself out. Electro closes in on Huma, but before he can, Peter falls back upside down with his guns open and fire. Electro laughs as he deflects the bullets, hitting Peter again with the shock stick, but Peter is lifted up and brought face to face with that shock stick, and he says that he's ready for a break. Just then Harry kicks in the doors, throwing Peter a satchel. Electro catches it, asking what they have here, and then he sees a bundle of TNT. The man with Harry presses a switch, and Electro, well, he's no more. With the smoke cleared, the electric lug is nowhere to be found, and the smiling man in red says that they gotta scoot. The place is surrounded by Electro's thugs, and there is a place that they can go. Huma whispers that she doesn't like following some man that she just met, but the man says that they have nothing to worry about. He's known Harry since she was a little girl. Let's just say that he is a business associate of her parents. After a short walk, the man brings them to Brill, a speakeasy located underneath an eyeglass shop, which should really be called the Sea-Easy. As the man walks in, Huma comments that he's strutting like he owns the joint. The doorman in the back comments, Herr Stark, and Mr. Stark says, well, he does own the joint. Peter follows through the cabaret to the door labeled Brian Ironsides, and he asks, who is? And Ironsides tells him that that is his stage name. Peter scoffs, stating that that is his code name. He's a spy. And Harry says that Ironsides is London's most valuable agent. Ironsides asks one of the girls what they know. She says that the target has fled. So Electro was last seen in a caravan heading due east. Mission objective remains, well, unclear. Huma then asks how this man can track Electro, but they can't. And Ironsides laughs because he owns all the gas stations for 100 miles and the telegraphs between them. After another woman hands him some papers, Ironsides says, all right, Istanbul. As Ironsides brings the crew back to Harry's plane, he says that they need to be careful out there. Hitler has a thing for people with mystic powers. Peter says that it's all superstitions, and Ironsides laughs. Yeah, the 6th evacuation of Urich was underway just because Hitler needs more sand for his sandbox. What you're looking for when you get over there is checkpoint red. The Russians will take it from there. A few hours later, Harry touches down in Istanbul where Peter finds a woman in red. She asks Peter Parker, and Peter says, checkpoint red? Red goes on stating that they're already too late and that Electro has gone, shorted out half the city in the process. As the night comes, the team follows Red into the desert, where she brings him to a dig site, to Bablyon. She hands over the paperwork to get them inside the grounds, and just as the soldier begins to review it, Red pulls out a knife, slicing his throat. After that, it's an all-out brawl, as Peter jumps in and starts shooting anyone that Red misses. But at the last second, there's a click of the gun in the wrong set of hands, and Huma points her gun at Peter's head, telling everyone else not to move. The remaining Nazi soldiers all begin to subdue everyone, and as they get to Harry, Harry remains quiet. The soldiers begin to yell weakling in German, but she jumps back, knocking the soldiers back, revealing a set of armor under her cloak, asking if they think that she's weak. Her name is Hurry, keeper of secrets, guardian of the tomb, protector of the lost treasure that sleeps beneath this sand. The heart of Wakanda beats within her. Hurry, formerly known as Harry, throws one of her spears to free Peter and a second through the mouth of a Nazi soldier guarding Red. As more soldiers appear, the sound of a plane can be heard approaching, and as it swoops down firing at the Nazi soldiers. From the cockpit of the plane, Ironsides bursts out laughing, yelling, "Direct hit! Good old Ironsides! As usual, my timing is impeccable!" As Ironsides comes down to make another sweep of the area, Peter asks Red if she trusts him, and then grabs her close and webs up to the passing plane. Peter is jolted into the air, holding Red as Hurry holds her spear up, using the shaft to hook onto Peter's feet, and the three make a daring escape. Ironsides aims for the excavation site, but there's someone else watching, the electric lug himself, Electro. After a zap from a larger-than-life man, Ironsides' plane jerks out of control, flinging the heroes off and into the dunes. Once everyone is on their feet, Hurry tells them that they have to hurry. This place is lousy with Nazis. And Peter says that he has a lot of questions for her. After letting out another sigh, she says that her homeland is a paradise, but like most paradises, best kept a secret. Her blades were forged by Wakandan Vibranium, another worldly, almost invincible element, more precious than any earthly metal. However, there is something more powerful here. Not from her country, not from any country, but from an ancient star in a faraway dimension. The Dora Malaja have sworn to guard it with their lives, and for that great purpose, her king has sent her. The Imkran crystal, the end of it all, that is. The legends state that it holds enough power to end the known universe, and that it was entrusted to them by a people who nearly ended themselves using it. Peter laughs, stating that the Nazis are sitting atop of a magical space rock. That's rich. As the three sneak into the excavation site, Peter says that he doesn't get it. What does a space rock have to do with a bug stone? Hurry presses on, stating that she might have an idea or two. And a short while later, the trio stand before a giant doorway with a pattern carved into it that is the same pattern that the cicada stone looked like. Peter says that that sure is one big bug, and Hurry tells him that it's an Electro-sized one even. Chances are that Electro was just a regular-sized guy, but the crystal works in unpredictable ways. Peter then asks, like big Nazis? That's something the world doesn't need. Hurry starts to open up the giant stone doors, but as she does, hundreds of insects flutter out. But there's one buzzing that drowns them all out. Everyone looks up to see a massive cicada. Peter leaps up, trying to pin it down, and the bug shakes, flinging acid, and it melts away at Red's guns. Hurry then takes her spear, hurling it at the cicada's eye, hitting it in its brain and killing it. She goes to retrieve it and jokes at a cicada the size of a Sherman tank. Who'd have thunk it? As the three get further inside, Hurry goes on stating that this is the temple of the goddess Anana, and what they're coming up to is the tomb of heaven. This is the last stop on their journey to the Imkran crystal. As Peter gets closer to the glowing red door, he says that he feels a little strange, almost like he can sense a power coming through it. Just then Huma, with an even larger, more powerfully infused Electro, states that it is not polite not to share. Ironic, isn't it? She can dig up a 45,000-year-old stone key from across the galaxy, but she still needs a Wakandan Girl Scout to use it. It's time that they get to opening up that damn door. The crystal belongs to them. Electro lunges towards the ground, and as he bathes in the red glow, he begins to grow even bigger than before, towering over everyone. He roars, grabbing a hold of Peter, throwing him at the door, and as Peter bounces off of it, he can hear something calling out to him, his body changing. After shaking off the feeling, he skitters with his newly acquired spider form, snatching the cicada stone from Huma and throwing it over to Hurry. Electro slams his fist on the ground and Hurry tosses up towards the door, but the door opens up with an explosive force. And what Peter sees is his worst nightmare. It's all the villains that he clipped and sent to the great beyond. Except this time, they're more powerful and more dead. This might not be a problem except without the cicada stone. Peter's bones twist and crack into place as he reverts back to his normal human form. He swings in, kicking Craven, but after being knocked off balance by Sandman, Chameleon flings his tongue, grabbing our hero by the throat. Huma begins to laugh, telling Peter that he can do much better than that, and Peter asks if she really has to do this. The 5 sinisters, he scratched it once already? Who should have stayed scratched? While each of the villains take their turns, having at it at the wall crawler, Huma goes on stating that there's only one way to get out of this place, the crystal. But with Huma distracted, Hurry and Red make a break for it to try and destroy the crystal, which they are easily thwarted. Huma releases a small bit of her power, shouting that they are just stupid mortals, century after century. They never learn, and she has been ever so patient. As the floating shards of the crystal shoot down to skewer the woman, Huma yells, "This is all my damned sister's fault. I should be finding and punishing Eggerskill. Instead, my sister decided to live among the humans rather than return the key and the crystal." Red asks, "What? Who? What are you yammering about?" Hurry says that it's the cicada stone and the Mcron crystal, the key to the whole Jalapeon engine. Peter webs up a shard, stating that it sounds like he missed a few chapters. Let's skip ahead a few pages. As the shard is freed, it impales Sandman, and it takes a second one cracking Goblin. But before Peter can get his bearings, Electro clocks him from behind, tackling him over the ledge of the deep, deep pit. Peter grabs a hold of the ledge by the skin of his teeth, and Huma asks, "Do you know what's down below? The underworld! It's a long way down, Parker!" Before Peter can climb back up, Huma whips her tail around a Peter's hand before he and Electro can plummet to the depths below. In one last-ditch effort, Peter webs up a crystal, stating that he has been stung by far worse. She's gonna have to do better than that, Doc. She shouts that it will be her pleasure, and she hits Peter with one last blast, nearly knocking him out. But instead of falling forever, Peter smacks face first into the pavement in front of the black cat. Peter picks himself back up, heading into the bar, and sitting on the table is Uncle Ben. Peter says that he doesn't believe it, but Uncle Ben says that he better. He's looking, well, you looked better, son. Peter asks if he died, and Ben hands him a drink, telling him, "Welcome to the club, son." But so what if you got a taste of the bitter end? It doesn't have to be. And Peter says that he should have just stuck to the burrows instead of being swept into all of this. He can't save everyone. He traveled the entire world to stop what, a god? Ben tells him that he can't live his life in the shadow of what he can't do. It doesn't change anything, and it sure as heck doesn't mean that he has to give up. Not now. So scram. Go on, get out of here. There's work to be done, boy. Peter suddenly feels dizzy, falling to the ground when he wakes back up. There's someone else there to greet him. A voice telling him to stand up. They don't have much time. Peter looks up and he sees Holly? Holly Babson? Holly says that she has many names. Urgerskill is what her sister Anana calls her. Peter says that it doesn't make sense. Why would Huma try offing her? And Holly says that it started when Huma was banished from the underworld. She'd do anything to get back in. Now, take this. Peter looks at the object handed to him and he asks what he's supposed to do with an egg. Holly tells him to take a closer look, and when Peter closes his hand and he opens it, he sees the spider totem. He looks back up and he sees the spider god. And he asks what all of this is for. To torture him? Is he still dead? Is this supposed to be hell? The spider god tells him, "It's not about you. It's about the crystal. With the Twilight of War approaching, it has to be destroyed or the universe might have been." Peter asks, is that why he's out of the Big Apple? And the spider god says that there's no Big Apple without the big marble. No world without a universe. And with great power must also come great responsibility, but not only for great things. As the spider god changes back into the cat Ding Ding, and he says that they must return now. But then there's a shout and Electro yells, "Surprise!" And he clocks Peter. Peter shakes his head, stating that even undead Electro is too much of a live wire. And then he gets shocked again. But before Electro could give his stick the juice, the spider god changes back into their original form, chomping down on Electro. As the spider god is crunching on the bones and he burps. Peter tells him, thank you. And as he floats up, the spider god says that he still has to fight the finish. Go! Back in the real world, Peter soars through the crystal, snatching the cicada stone, and Huma asks what is he doing? Tossing it towards the Mcron crystal, shooting it. The brooch shatters into brilliantly bright red beams, and it blasts through the crystal, shooting Huma into shards as she melts away. And a few months later, Peter finds himself back in New York, doing all he could do to keep the streets clean from all the crooks, criminals, and mobsters. The news reports that Dr. Huma Bergman has gone missing, but Peter smiles knowing that she got what's for. As the news concludes, Jameson yells, "And curse that infernal Spider-Man!" And Peter gives a chuckle. "I missed you too, Jameson." And there you have it. Spider-Man Noir is wrapped up with yet another storyline. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. It was a blast to record. I always have fun when I get to do a little weird spin or flair. And I know some of you guys are going to complain about it, but some of you guys are going to like it. And at the end of the day, the only thing that matters is I had fun doing it. Anyway, Spider-Man Noir is a blast. I love this character. I wish they would do more with him, but honestly, the fact that he only shows up in these miniseries makes him good. Because then we get to see just the best of the best as opposed to just running the same circle of storylines. Don't forget, you can find us over at Patreon, patreon.com/Comicstorian, where you can get early access to a lot of our videos. You can also find us at YouTube memberships to get early access to a lot of our videos. And a special thank you to all you Patreons and YouTube membership individuals. You guys are great. At the end of the day, I hope you guys enjoyed Spider-Man Noir. We're bringing back Amazing Spider-Man next week to get that story caught up. So we have that one coming. We also got like Iron Man 2020. We're going to start working on the Ghostmaker with Batman. Either way, guys, I'm having a blast doing these videos, these longer, more intensive videos, and I hope you guys are enjoying them as well. I will see you next week right here.